What's up, filmers? It's Azora Hype here with another hype entry into the vlog, and this one was one of my favorite moments of the whole weekend, and it was the interview of the linguist David Peterson. He was very well spoken, of course, and he had some absolutely amazing answers for the questions that were asked. We actually got to hang out with him after, and we got to go visit our business partners who make the Valar Morghulis coin, Shire Postman, so that was super fun. But before you jump into the video, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell for amazing upcoming content and hype videos for A Game of Thrones Season 7. Now, aboard the hype train and into the video. Yeah, actually, well, I have my own YouTube channel, and we actually just we
were talking to them all day, and they were like, oh, yeah, they told us about the relationship with them, and we're like,
because we were talking about who we were going to interview today and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, we've always kind of wanted to market our stuff out a little bit more. And I'm like, well, you know, I like to do giveaways on the channel. Like, I'm giving away Arya's Sword and Needle, for example, for my subscribers for Season 7.
Nice.
And, but we were just talking, we're like, you know, I like to give away shirts, like channel shirts that we have and all sorts of stuff. But the stuff that we found from them, the Valar Morghulis coin and the Iron Bank coin, we're like, oh my God, we got to get some of these. And then we saw the Black Goat of Qohor, and they were speaking about you.
They're like, we owe him those. And we're like, we're going to see him in like
half an hour. Like literally half an hour ago.
Wow. Wait. Are they here?
Yeah, they're downstairs. Yeah.
They're like vendoring here?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, totally. Yeah. We'll take you over if you want.
Nice. Yeah. I would love to meet them.
And they're super nice.
Cool.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll wrap up at about 2:55.
What's our question?
So we'll just go straight down the road. One question each, and then look back without the extra time.
Oh, okay.
Right? Okay, we'll start here.
What's our question?
Ready?
Alright, I'll jump right into this. Would you like to work on any of the Game of Thrones spin-offs making languages? And what's your idea for a spin-off? You just make it a thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, absolutely. Because it's paid work. You know that before I was working on Game of Thrones, I was teaching community college for a couple of years. It really doesn't pay a lot, and it was a lot of work. I was making about $19,000 a year. And from what I heard, things have gotten worse. So yeah, I would enjoy continuing to be employed because I've done nothing else for the past, what is it now? 2009, 8 years. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that would be great. But now, as for a spin-off, I mean, of course, the first thing that occurs to me is, you know, I was a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I loved how you saw this huge time jump between the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. I think that would be cool to see in Game of Thrones, but not like 100 years, more like 500 to 600 years. Just to really see what happens, you know, after the great big nuclear bomb that ends the series. Oh shit! Sorry. No, yeah, I think that would be cool. I would love to see future Westeros. All right.
So in constructing, I'm George. I'm from Azora Hype. In constructing a language, there seems to be a lot of differentiation and a lot of well, it's manufactured obviously, but with a constructed language, do you find that there's a limitation that you don't have in the organic growth of a language, like a smaller number of words or a more directed number of words? Because of course you're in control of it, so you're able to direct it that way. But as opposed to letting something organically create itself, how do you feel about that kind of divergent path?
Well, basically, when you're creating a language, that's what you're trying to emulate. You're trying to emulate the organic evolution of the language. You're just in control of every step of it, so every decision is conscious as opposed to unconscious. The only downside is that language as we speak it today is crowdsourced. So the one thing that helps with is the large-scale generation of vocabulary, which is very difficult to do and very time-consuming to do on one's own. You know, like most created languages that you know that you see that have been created. Like my largest created language in terms of vocabulary size is probably Dothraki, and it has over 4,000 words. And that's not anywhere close to the natural languages that we speak today that have hundreds of thousands. And that's simply because it just takes time to create a new word. It takes time to think about, all right, if this is the concept that I want, is it going to be a new root? If it's going to be a new root, what is the sound going to be? How will it have changed over the years? And then if it's not a new root, am I borrowing it from a language, in which case you have to create it in that language and go through the same process. If not, am I deriving it via regular means from some other word that already exists or not? Is it going to be a compound? Is it going to have other shades of meaning? How is it going to relate to other words in that semantic category? So it's like, to do it right, it takes a good 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes to come up with one word. Maybe you come up with one or two others in the same semantic subgroup while you're doing it. But imagine that, and then needing a vocabulary of, say, at least 150,000 words to be on par with a modern language, and even that's kind of a smallish number. And there's only so much time. The only created languages that have vocabularies with any size like that are those that are either just totally copying the vocabulary of some other language, so they just apply some regular changes to, say, the grammar the vocabulary of English or something like that, in which case they haven't really created anything at all. It's just a mindless computation. Or those that have actually developed a number of speakers and the language actually gets used. And that'd be a language like Esperanto, where, Zamenhof came up with a bunch of words, sure, but after it was getting used regularly, then we didn't need to anymore. We're just coming up with stuff on their own for things that they needed to talk about in daily life. So that's the main limitation in terms of the difference between a created language and a natural language. But also, when you're working on a television show, there's a further limitation that I had not experienced and other language creators don't have, which is that you cannot know beforehand exactly how a scene is going to shoot, which means that vocabulary that could otherwise be specific cannot be specific. Especially if you're talking about English speakers writing the dialogue, because they're not going to be sensitive to certain distinctions that another language might. So, for example, in English, cat and cats, it's just one cat or many, many cats. Many languages have a different marker in between, which is exactly two of something. So Arabic is like this. So, walad is boy, waladan is two boys, and then awlad is many. But I could never do that for one of the languages I create, because I can never be certain that they're going to be talking about exactly two of anything. Because, when on the day of, maybe they just don't have that many extras, or maybe they just want to throw somebody else in, it doesn't look full enough. And so suddenly you use this specialized form for exactly two of something, talking about many of something, and it's like, at that point, it's not even, the details aren't even right like that. It's like, why didn't you do it? So that's the type of detail I can't add to the language, just because of the uncertainty of it. So, extra Hollywood constraint, I guess.
Hi, my name is Roy. I'm from Panama. Okay, this is the question. Some words have very special meaning for the people, like love, hate, or peace. What thing you take into consideration to create this word?
Yeah. So the way it works when you're creating a language is you always have to take into consideration the people that are speaking it and what their culture is, what their traditions are like, and everything. So it's useful with Game of Thrones because I can kind of do anthropological research simply by reading the books. Of course, they go into even more detail than the show does. So that's a wonderful resource for me. Because, for other shows that aren't based on books, often we're just creating stuff on the fly, which can also be fun because then I can just create it. But then there's no canon for somebody to just completely change it later on. And so the cool thing that I created is suddenly now, it doesn't fit with the other stuff that's in the rest of the show. So it's nice for Game of Thrones to have all of that material there in the books. Though, of course, we've run a little dry of late. We're anxious for more But yeah, so that's what I do, and basically I just start with my interpretation of the culture as revealed in the books, and then from there I kind of move on and extrapolate in a way that language creators do. So, for example, lots of languages use or make use of guiding metaphors that exist in language after language. So it's like, no matter what language you find on Earth, you'll always find metaphors where up means good and down means bad. In some ways, very basic like that. And so all human languages will have stuff like that. Then there's also specific stuff. For example, the metaphor time is money is something that's really used quite a bit in English. So you say like, there was a delay on the freeway and it cost me like 20 minutes. It's a weird thing to think about, saying that that's a commercial transaction, right? But that's just something that's very common in English. So we say things like that, I spent 5 hours on that project, I wasted 3 hours doing this and so on and so forth. Obviously the Dothraki wouldn't have something like that because they don't have money. But then they have other kind of guiding cultural ideas that can be fruitful for kind of metaphorical expansion. So one of those is that they believe that anything that's important should be done outside under the open sky. So it's not like there would be a marriage ceremony and anything that would be inside a tent, it would be outside. This was just something from the books, and I thought that was really cool. And so then I use that to create, new metaphorical expressions. So, for example, to say that in Dothraki, if you say the literal words to do something under a roof, it means to do it secretively, slyly, and perhaps deviously. That was just something that was completely born of George R.R. Martin's characterization. So that's basically the process I go through. It's kind of like I look at the people, I look at the culture, and I extrapolate based on what I think makes sense.
This was an awesome question, and it was based around some of the dead cultures in the language that is still spoken, like High Valyrian. David goes into detail about what we might see in the books going forward, and some of his process that he had to deal with High Valyrian in the show was very, very different than working with the other languages. So please enjoy this one.
Just because not only do we not know a lot about it, but it seems pretty clear that it's important that we don't know it now, and it seems like we're going to know a lot more later, like in the last 2 books when they come out. And so then it's not like I can even guess or do my own work there, whereas you can with some of the other lands where it's clear that the series is never going to go there, and so you could be fruitful in that area. But not with the Valyrians. It really seems some of their cultural traditions are very important, and we don't know what they are, and we will one day. And so for that reason, I've had to scale things back there, just go based on what I know, and also just stick to stuff that's not more literal, but something that's more common to all human cultures. And that's kind of a bummer, because it's part of the fun of it, and that's part of what makes a language really interesting and really vibrant. And I would love to expand it in that way, but I have to leave some blank spaces in there for when we know more, and I can actually use it for expansion.
Hi David, I'm Steve from Review STL, Review St. Louis. I was just wondering, when it comes to accents for the various languages, how do you work on developing those and integrating those with the spoken word?
Well, developing them is pretty easy. Incorporating them is a different thing. But kind of the accents that we have when we're speaking other languages are fairly predictable based on the phonological inventory of our languages, that is what sounds we have, and how they map to the language that we are trying to speak. And then also the intonational patterns. So like one super easy thing to know, if you're an English speaker and you're speaking any other language pretty much except for German, we have this phenomenon called aspiration in English, where if you hold your hand in front of your mouth like that and you can pronounce the words spy and pie, you're going to notice a huge puff of air when you say pie, but not in spy. And that's called aspiration, and it happens with voiceless stops when they occur in word initial or in tonic initial position. But that aspiration disappears after S. So when English speakers are pronouncing Spanish, usually even if they're trying their best, if they don't know how to do it, they'll say things like, you know, perro, which doesn't sound right. I mean, it's got a trill in there, and then of course there's also something that happens with the O on the end. But there's no like that in Spanish. It's not appropriate. It would be perro, but it's not something that English speakers are really aware of, so they'll just do it. Another fun thing, so like how I said the aspiration disappears after an S, exactly the opposite happens in Hindi. So the state in the northwest of Hindi is called Rajasthan, where there's a T, and it's supposed to be there after the S. But if you ask English speakers to say it, they just say Rajasthan, which will be mispronounced in Hindi, and importantly mispronounced in Hindi. But it's just something that you can predict based on how English works. So, moving that the other way then, you've got the Dothraki language created, for example, or the Valyrian language created, and you know how its phonotactics work. And so then you will also know what mistakes English speakers will make when they speak those language, and then what mistakes native Dothraki speakers will make when they speak English. And for the beginning of the show, I actually created 3 different accents for Dothraki speakers speaking English, and I modeled them, I recorded them on MP3, saying the same thing in English, using a really heavy Dothraki accent, using kind of a middling one, and then using a really light one, so that speakers could hear it. And it, Elias, is it Elias? Don't print this. Is it Elias Grable or Gable? I met him. I can't remember his last name, but he played Rakaro, and he did a really good job of doing a Dothraki accent. There's also one part where I remember Jason Momoa did a really cool thing. There's one part where he says in English, throne, and he says throne. I actually recorded that for him and had him say it that way. I remember once somebody challenged me on that. It's like, how is it not a th sound when it's right there in Dothraki? But I was like, but in Dothraki, you never get that sequence at the beginning of a word. It's impossible because of the evolution of that sound, which started out as a hra, and that would never come before R. And so consequently in Dothraki, there's never any words that begin with a thra. And so when he gets that, he just pronounces it throne. I was proud of that one. Anyway. So yeah, sometimes it works though, and then sometimes it's just like I can't talk to the actors, and they're just kind of doing their own thing. And so sometimes it's pretty good, sometimes it's okay. Most of the time though, I'm pretty happy with it.
So that was our interview with David Peterson. It was super fun to get to know him. He was an absolute gentleman and has some really awesome stuff to say about the books and the show. And most of all, he really went into depth about creating a new language, which is something that most of us don't know anything about. Now, if you did enjoy this interview, make sure you smash that like button. The support really helps the channel grow. And these Con of Thrones videos, we need to get everyone to see them for all of the people who couldn't be there to enjoy the event in person. Also, a special shout out to Blaze-Manga, who did the awesome new intro and the end screen annotation and the art for the t-shirts that will be coming soon. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. 7 blessings.
Fuck the king.